All right. The grand opening of Mac and JT.
I love it. The music was great. How are you, Casey?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm feeling awesome. I'm super excited for this show. It may or may not be bumpy because it looks like we're having slight technical issues. Um, but we'll power through and it'll be all right. It'll be okay. Um,
It's
Jacob,
the preseason for everyone, us included. It's
of
not week
course.
one yet. Week one's on, I guess, tomorrow. We're not even one day until week one.
Yeah, one day until week one. Um, let's first just kind of talk about what this show is going to try to be. I know we had that full screen up. I'm going to put it back up just for a second. Um, today's episode is going to try to encapsulate all these different things. We're going to cover the news for the NFL. We're going to break down each game. We're going to give you some picks for Thursday night's game, some props, and maybe a parlay. We're going to work on that live together. And then we will give out our picks for every game. And we'll just wrap it up. We're going to try to keep it to an hour, but more than likely we'll go a little over because there's just a lot to cover week one. So without a further ado, Jacob, let's get into Thursday night football, shall we?
Let's do it. I don't know about you, but boy, it feels like forever. College football has been great, but I miss the NFL. There's just something about the NFL. We've had the offseason to, bide our time, but it's right around the corner. We've all been doing our fantasy drafts for the last week or so, and you have your team, you're getting ready to go for Thursday night, and there's just nothing better than this. We saw a first big storyline of week one yesterday, though, with Travis Kelce's knee injury. Casey, what did you think about that?
Oh, that's huge. It's huge.
Unbelievable.
You think about the players that are on the weapons that are on the Chiefs in general, and there's really not a guy like a dude, a stud, other than Travis Kelsey. I mean, everyone else is unproven. There could be a potential for that one day, but as of right now, I mean, you're looking at a bunch of twos and threes. Kadarius Toney, a guy who was drafted as a first round pick, flamed out at the Giants, had some really big moments last year for the Chiefs, but um, you know he hasn't really proven that he can stay healthy either. Then you look at MVS, Marquez Valdez Scatling. He is another guy that's like a number two or a number three on your team, and then Sky Moore.
At best.
And so, if Mahomes is able to pull off a victory with that set of weaponry, and everyone's already crowned these Lions as the sleeper pick, I guess, the team that everyone should be watching out for. Um, it would be something else. I would have to give my props to Patrick Mahomes at that point. But not only just that, Jacob, they have drama on the defensive side with Chris Jones.
They do.
I don't know what to make of that either.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes is obviously in a world of his own, but once you remove him from the equation, they're now missing their best offensive and best defensive player. Two guys that they've built this dynasty-like team around to try to win. Without those guys, Chiefs football doesn't work. Chris Jones is the anchor of what's been a shoddy defense over the last couple of years. He's been been able to hold that together. And you touched on the rest of the weapons outside of Travis Kelsey. People keep pointing to last season, how, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl with just as bad of weapons. He had Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, I know what a lot of people in Cincinnati are thinking about Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think the same thing. I don't think he's all that, but that's a proven commodity that can catch the ball, that can get you first downs, that's played in the NFL for years in the past and knows how to play an NFL offense and win some games. They don't have that anymore. You touched on MVS. That's the best chance that they have at a veteran lead receiver in a room with Kadarius Toney, who certainly needs help with leadership, Justin Ross, who you can't bank on being healthy. I don't know what to expect with this Chiefs offense without Travis Kelsey. I'm wondering if they're going to start to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit as a receiver. You saw him catch the ball so much at LSU. They didn't use him nearly at all once Pacheco took over as the starting running back. There was some trade conversation in the offseason about him, but he obviously didn't go anywhere. I would be interested to see if we start to see him a little bit tomorrow night with the depleted weapons.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to come up with something. I know we make a big deal out of the weapons not being there, but the man to be able to do that job is Andy Reid. He's going to be able to figure out some way to get everyone involved, get the ball in their hands, get them into open space, whatever it's going to take for them to be able to move this offense forward without Travis Kelce for however long that might be. They'll be able to figure it out because Andy Reid might be one of the greatest offensive minds in all of football. But like
Travis Kelce hasn't been ruled out yet, right?
No.
He's just doubtful. Or maybe even questionable.
Doubtful, hyperextended knee. And I don't know if anyone's ever experienced a hyperextended knee, but it's not the greatest thing in the world.
Not fun. Not fun. Definitely takes a couple days before you can even start trying to run on it again. So I'd be surprised if he's out there as Travis Kelce. I think there's probably a pretty good chance that he plays on Thursday night just because, you know, if we're as excited for week one, are you sure the NFL players are feeling the same way, ready to get back on the field? I'm sure he'll be out there. I don't think it's going to be the prolific receiving threat, 1-1 tight end. No one else is even close at the position that we've seen over the last couple of years and have come to expect.
Right. I agree. And, you know, that's not the only thing wrong with this Chiefs to start the season either. I mentioned Chris Jones and the whole contract dispute. L'Jarius Sneed, he's also hurt. He was limited at practice with a knee injury as well. I mean, they're not coming into this season full force. They're not here. They're not at full capacity. They're not at full strength right now. And, you know, I really wonder. They also lost some key pieces on the offensive line, having to make some adjustments there with Juwan Taylor trying to be that replacement for Orlando Brown Jr. That ended up not being the case. They ended up going with Donovan Smith. They picked him up late in May, and so now they trot out their two guys that have not been with this offensive line. They've not had the cohesion. They haven't had that opportunity for that yet, and they're going up against two guys who are kind of sleepers, and I know that's probably going to be the term used a lot for this Lions team, but Aiden Hutchinson, a former number one overall, not number one overall, but you get the point. A very high
first round
pick for the Lions. Had 11
top
sacks.
5.
Yeah, top 5. 11 sacks last year. Had an 80 PFF grade. A stud. And then the sleeper of the two that I mentioned before, James Houston. He had 7 games last year that he played in. 8 sacks. He had the 7th highest win rate in pass rushing. That could be a very scary tandem. And for a team that is struggling to find some key pieces to attack with, you're gonna need to be able to protect Mahomes for them to get open. So those two, they're going to be my biggest factor in this game. Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston. I think those two together are a problem for the Chiefs. And not to mention, if we're just going to move on to the Lions for just a second, you know this guy very well. Jahmyr Gibbs.
Absolutely.
What a weapon. Plans to be used in more than just the running attack. I think they plan on using him as a slot receiver.
And he has the ability to do it. He was pushing, pacing at a per game rate. He was pushing 1,000 yards in the SEC last year as a receiving back. That's numbers that translate. That's a play style that translates. And we talked about this whole offseason, how running backs aren't being able to get paid and how running backs are being pushed to the wayside after their rookie contract. Well, this Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson kind of running back is what you need to do in order to have a future in the NFL at that position long term. You have to be able to catch. You have to be able to block. And you still do have to be able to run. You see a lot of these gimmick backs coming out that are really just receivers, and they don't last either. You have to be able to do it all and provide your value to the team. So when your rookie contract does come up, they don't Jonathan Taylor, all these guys that keep, getting pushed into free agency after their first 4 years are up. You got to be able to catch the ball. And that's what that's what Jahmyr Gibbs does. And that's why the Lions took him at 12. You're not going to take a guy at 12 if you're not planning on using him. So just to touch on fantasy real quick, that's one of the reasons I love Jahmyr Gibbs this year in fantasy, is because they're not going to use that draft capital on a guy that they don't plan on using.
Right. Agreed. 100%. I'm not scared of Montgomery taking any of those snaps away from him. I think he's just too dynamic to not have as possibly your RB1. You're probably going to be able to get him at RB2. So, yeah, he's one of my sleeper picks this year. A lot of people in fantasy, they love to go after the rookie running backs, and for good reason. They usually turn out to be studs most of the time. And running backs usually only contribute for the rookie contracts. So now's a good time to pick him up. I think he's going to be used just about in every single way you can think of imaginable. Currently, the line is set for the Chiefs at -4.5. The over-under 52. With all that we've just said, this just screams a shootout. I mean, I don't know how there's any other way that you could really go about looking at this. The Lions don't really have the greatest secondary in the world, so that at least gives somewhat of an edge to the guys like MVS and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney to at least make some wiggle room. And when I mean by shootout, I don't know if I necessarily mean the traditional way either, like passing the ball all over the place. I could see this being a game where both teams rush for over 150 yards, where it's just back and forth between them just getting chunk after chunk after chunk. The Lions' offensive line is one of the top 5 best offensive lines in football. They were able to run the ball very effectively last year. And I don't know, 53, 52 points being the total, I don't know. I like that a lot. I'm not sure if I'm all the way in on taking it with a full unit, but I would do half a unit. I don't know about you, Jacob. How do you feel about it?
I am going to leave the over alone. I want to, especially if Travis Kelce does play. I feel slightly worse if Travis Kelce does play about that number, just because he will be out there taking away an active body if he isn't, fully active and fully ready to go. 52 does seem a little high, but I like what you mean. I mean, these offenses are going to be able to get the ball moving. I mean, the Lions defense was a complete joke last year. That team's in the playoffs and probably making a run if they're even average. The Chiefs defense without Chris Jones, no one knows what that's going to look like, but every metric you can possibly find tells you that it's going to take a massive step back. So high scoring for sure, but like you said, it might not be a passing game. It might be a chunk play, run play, kind of rule it out game, but those points do get scored and the offenses take control. But 52 seems a little too high. Chiefs down to 4.5. Now, I don't want to bet on Kansas City, but 4.5 doesn't seem like nearly enough points, Casey. I mean, you're sitting over there talking about, if Patrick Mahomes can somehow pull this off, he's a 4.5 point favorite. He's expected to win the game. This is without his weapons. This is an adjusted line. I think it moved too far for Travis Kelce. Just Travis Kelce being out. The Lions, I don't know that the Lions are ready for a prime time stage in their first year that they're supposed to be competing. That seems like a lot on their plate. If there's a coach that can get them ready for it, it's probably Dan Campbell. We saw it last year in Hard Knocks. That man could fire you up to run through a brick wall no matter what you're doing. Hey, he gives some of the best speeches in the entirety of the sport. So he can get those boys ready to go up against Kansas City week 1. But going into Arrowhead's never easy, and 4.5 is just way too low.
Listen, the Lions were my darlings last year. Motor City Dan Campbell, he started off real rough last year. It was like 1-6 or 1-7 last year, and they just came roaring back, and they made me look like a freaking genius last year. I have a lot of faith in this Lions team. I love them a lot. I think I'm going to take the Lions in this one. And
I love it.
it might be my prejudice. My prejudice is showing against Mahomes, but again, there's just something there, man. I don't know what it is. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense in my mind, but I just continue to doubt the guy for whatever reason. And this is just the next thing that I'm like, first it was just the injury, or it was without Tyreek Hill, or it was whatever excuse you might want to come up with. Now for this one, it's he doesn't have Travis Kelce, so let's see him do it now. Um, he'll probably prove me wrong again. I expect this game to be close, right? I said it was going to be a shootout, and I believe that. I think it's going to come down to the very end. Um, but you know, I got to go with the Lions. I think 4.5 might be a little low. I liked it better when it was like 5.5, or I think it was at 6.5 at one point. I would have definitely gone for it then, but yeah, Lions for me.
Since you're all the way in on that blue and silver, you dabbling on that plus 180 money line at all? You full fading Patrick Mahomes?
I don't know if I can full fade him. I don't know if I can do that.
That's a
yet.
smart man.
Uh,
That's a smart man.
I'll feel a little justified if it's if I barely miss out on the spread. But one other thing too before we move on to the next game, some props that I really love. Jahmyr Gibbs, the over on rush yards is 38.5. That is like
That's
bonkers.
that's might be 20 yards short of what I was expecting. I mean, that 38.5 is, unless they just fully expect David Montgomery to be the bell cow back here to start the year, which then we have a whole different conversation of why the heck are you using pick 12 on a running back if you think you can sign one in free agency. But at 36.5, I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. There's no way Jahmyr doesn't get more than that, especially if he gets anywhere near the touches we're expecting.
Right. And also, Marvin Jones Jr., we all know him as Marvelous Marvin from Cincinnati. His over is 26.5 receiving yards, and I think he's going to be receiver 2 until further notice. That seemed really low to me too. Then lastly, anytime touchdown scorer, Isaiah Pacheco. I think that kind of speaks for itself how I think this game is going to go. A lot of running, a lot of rushes. I think that's just kind of the logical play there. There's not a lot of other props out currently.
I had a tough time finding player props for Sunday's games. But that Marvin Jones down there below 30, especially without Jameson Williams, your only real threat is Josh Reynolds. And I mean, if you're a guy like me and you're betting player props, you look for the little weird nuggets that don't really matter but give you a little boost in your own head. Marvin Jones switched to 0 this year. That's a pretty cool looking number. And that seems like a guy that's going to get over 26.5 receiving yards wearing the number 0.
I have to agree. I'm just going to read some of the chats here. Let's see here. Mark, welcome, Mark. Sir Boy, of course. Pleasure to have you back here. Jack Butler, how far did the Lions go this season? Last year I had them as my dark horse wild card team. I think that's appropriate this year. I think that they're probably going to be a wild card team. I don't know that the NFC North is so tough to predict. And we'll get into that later because I have just so many doubts about the Vikings. I just don't know if they can continue to just win the way that they did last year. But
one-score games.
Yeah, a lot of one-score games. I would say 9 wins is probably the Lions. If that was the bet was 9 wins, I would take it. If it was 9.5, I'd be a little concerned with that. Let's see. Any other Derby Stardom? Welcome back. I know you're part of the off the bench chat. Ricky Logan, nice to see you. Joe, nice to see you, Joe. Thoughts on Hard Knocks? I don't know if you've watched Hard Knocks at all, but I've been enjoying it. Makes me like Aaron Rodgers a little bit more than I did before. We all know how I felt about Aaron Rodgers before this. If you watch Off the Bench, but Oh, we lost your mic. We lost your mic. Anyways, while he tries to fix that, I think we're going to move on to the Panthers versus the Falcons. The Jets will only win 5 games. Listen, sir boy, I think they're a little better than that. I don't know. I don't know what they'll get, but I think 5 wins is a little low. I think 5 wins is just a little low. I don't expect them to make it to the playoffs, though, if that makes you feel any better. Let's see here. Let's go on to Falcons versus the Panthers here. So, Panthers, they drafted Bryce Young, number 1 overall. They went all in a quarterback. Can't really blame them for that. You find a guy that you really like, you got to pounce on him, and that's exactly what the Panthers did. Can't fault them for that, but they lost a lot to get him, specifically DJ Moore. I think that was a huge loss. They're right now trouting out there Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst, Miles Sanders as the playmakers. And
Casey?
Yep, I hear you.
Am I back?
You are
Good
back.
stuff. Sorry about that, guys.
But yeah, I worry about this Panthers team a little bit, mainly because Adam Thielen is a aging receiver, played second fiddle to Justin Jefferson last year and only managed to get 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. I know they probably force-fed Justin Jefferson a lot of targets, but those 700 yards came off of 70 receptions. So he's not the same. He's not the same Adam Thielen that many remember. DJ Chark is also a number 2 receiver, in my opinion, and number 3. Hayden Hurst, we all know how he looked last year as the Bengals tight end. And Miles Sanders was in an offense that had one of the best offensive lines in all football, a top 5 quarterback, top 10 duo at receiver. So I feel like a lot of the pressure was lifted off of him. I know he had a really great season, 1,269 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 4.9 yards a carry. It's pretty crazy. But it's just not. I'm worried about their offense, man. Maybe it's just premature, but I like having a bona fide number 1 receiver for a rookie quarterback. And examples of that not working out for quarterbacks of recent memory, if you think about like Trevor Lawrence before, he really got some of those guys in the building. If you think about, Justin Fields, some of these guys that just didn't really have a lot of offensive threats, they tend to struggle. They tend to need someone to lean on, to find when they're in a pressured moment, to just get them the ball. And I'm worried. I'm worried about Bryce Young. I know you probably won't be because you watched him and you know what he's made of. But what are your thoughts, Jacob?
The Bryce Young conversation, I'm in a very weird spot for the Bryce Young conversation because as you've seen, I'm sure anyone that's been watching any sports talk show all summer, people are taking sides. There's CJ Stroud fans and there's Bryce Young fans, and you're picking one, and that's your rookie quarterback, and you got to make a stance. Well, I grew up an Ohio State fan, and I'm still an Ohio State fan, but I go here to Alabama, and I've worked with the team when Bryce was here for the last 2 years, and I got to watch firsthand how good that kid is at football. And then he goes 1-1 to Carolina, and I obviously don't want anything but for him to succeed, but I am a CJ Stroud guy. I want to get that out in the air before I start loving on Bryce Young here. I think Bryce is going to be great. I think Bryce is going to get dropped into Carolina, and he's going to absolutely tear it up. I think he's going to lock up Offensive Rookie of the Year early into the season. I think the weapons that they got, like you said, there's no bona fide number 1, but it's guys that aren't going to drop the ball. It's guys that aren't going to run the wrong route. Like Adam Thielen's going to catch every ball thrown his way. He's going to beat 10 yards when you tell him to beat 10 yards. Hayden Hurst, if you tell him to run a slant, he's running a slant. Hayden Hurst can block. Like DJ Chark has been in the league forever. He's played on quarterback to quarterback, offense to offense. He'll be able to gel into that system somewhat easily and be ready to go week one at least an okay level. I love what Miles Sanders can do out of the backfield, playing in a place like Philadelphia. He can bring some of that winning attitude, some of that championship pedigree over to Carolina and show them kind of how do you do this? How do you get this team to that point? They also drafted Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss, who I absolutely love. I think Jonathan Mingo is just that big body wide receiver that the Ole Miss has been putting out. I guess they only have two of them out, A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. But he's that big body receiver that's coming into the league out of Ole Miss and tearing it up right away. And I think he's going to have a great rookie year. I think he might have been one of the steals of the draft in a deep receiver class. I mean, going to Carolina where he's going to have a chance to truly seize a number one role if he has that ability. If he wants to do that, he could take the number one role in Carolina very early in the season and establish himself as an NFL receiver. I think Bryce is going to be great. The O-line struggled in camp. Granted, their joint practice was with Philly, so I think anyone's O-line would struggle. But, you know, I'm excited for Bryce. I think he's going to be really fun to watch. I think there's definitely going to be hiccups, but I think Carolina did a good job putting him in a good place to succeed as a rookie.
Yeah, and I think we all go into this year thinking that they're still trying to build something there, right? I mean, we're not expecting them to be playoff contenders by any stretch of the imagination. That goes for most of these rookie quarterbacks. I think all of them are in situations right now where they're all in a rebuilding environment. But, you know, you bring up a good point with Jonathan Mingo. I kind of forgot that he was one of my sleeper draft picks as well. Really like that kid from Ole Miss. Big guy. He could come out and eventually get that number one type role. He can fill in that role. He's got the body type for it. But as of right now, as things stand on the offensive side, this is probably the best opportunity for Bryce Young to get his feet wet because the Falcons defense was quite literally one of the worst defensive passing teams in all of football. They tried to get some dudes to try to plug up those holes. Guys like Jesse Bates, who we all know very well, Jeffrey Okudah. Unfortunately, he got hurt. They tried to fix some of the defensive line issues because they weren't getting enough pressure. So they went and got guys like Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree, Caden Ellis and David Onyemata, all those guys to try to bolster what was one of the worst units in all of football. And let me tell you, the guys that they had on defense before, like the Grady Jarrett's and AJ Terrells, they looked horrible last year, just terrible. And hopefully they can regain some of that prowess again. Maybe they can come back and look like the old selves again. But I don't know. I'm very high on the Falcons. I'll get into why here in a minute. But this is going to be Bryce Young's first opportunity in the NFL. I think this is a very good opportunity for him while this new defense is still trying to get gelled and figure themselves out. The Falcons, however, they are my dark horse team this year. Last year was the Lions. Everyone laughed at me. They thought I was some crazy lunatic. But I've done my research, and I think the Falcons, the guys that they got on defense, I think it's enough to get them from the bottom of the league to at least your maybe best case scenario average, right? And that's all it really would take for them to really catapult. Because let me tell you why. Bijan Robinson is going to dominate. He's going to get too many carries to even guesstimate. He might break Derrick Henry's record. Okay, the dude is going to have all the opportunities in the world to carry the football, and they've got a really good three-headed monster over there. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and Cordell Patterson are some of the most dynamic running backs that you could ask for. that system as well. I mean, it's based off of the play action. They've got Desmond Ridder as their starting quarterback, which many people are going to laugh at me when I say this, but I think he's in a really good position to do something this year. I'm not saying that he's going to be a world beater, but if he is what everyone thinks he is as a game manager, this is the best opportunity for him. He's going to have receivers like Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I know Kyle Pitts is a tight end, but he's a receiving tight end, okay? Those two are both well over 6'5", really large receiving threats, do well in play action because your quarterback can just, after the play action, turn around and chuck it deep to you. And I think Desmond Ridder, if you ask me, when he was at UC, he was throwing it deep to Alec Pierce and Tyler Scott all the time, and with a lot of success. So I think the Falcons this year have a really good chance to shock a lot of people. I can't put my finger on how many wins that they'll get, but they also, when you look at their schedule, they had a last place schedule. So they have that advantage going for them as well.
They also play in a joke of a division. The NFC South is an absolute joke.
Right, and
I mean my pick to win the division is the Saints, and we'll get into that later in the Saints game. But the Falcons are in a weird spot because you see teams now that they usually get the quarterback first, and then you go get everything else. Well, it seems like Atlanta's kind of getting everything else. They have the generational tight end. They have the first-round receiver. They have the top 10 running back. They have the 1,000-yard rookie running back, change of pace. They have the Joker, Cordero Patterson. Like, what are we doing here? Either the Atlanta Falcons have Casey McAllister level utmost faith in Desmond Ridder, or they're doing something incredibly wrong. Because if the Falcons don't think Desmond Ridder is the quarterback of the future, the quarterback that can get him over the hump, the quarterback that can get him back to the Super Bowl and maybe don't blow a 28-3 lead this time, then they're doing the right thing. If he can't get you back there, you're in trouble because you have all these guys whose clocks are already ticking. Kyle Pitts is going into year 3. Drake London's going into year 2. Bijan Robinson, we talked about what happens to running backs after their rookie contracts. Well, that clock just started. That clock's starting to go. So if Desmond Ridder can't figure it out in the next few years and you don't get a savior like a Aaron Rodgers to the Jets or a Brady to Tampa, I think Atlanta's in a really bad spot long term with some really good skill position players.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought too, is like it's kind of an all-in proposition for them. Like they purposefully did not try to find a quarterback this year, which makes me feel like there is something there. Like they can't be that
right.
They can't be that dumb, right? Like they can't be that stupid to not go find someone. There has to be something there. That's why I've got a lot of faith in them. If you're gonna ask me who I'm picking at 3.5, I'm gonna be picking the Falcons. I felt a lot better when it was at 3, at least for the push, because last year, I don't know if you remember this, but in Atlanta, the game went down into overtime because DJ Moore caught the game-winning touchdown, right? And he started to celebrate, and he got flagged for the celebration, and they missed the extra point.
Took his helmet off.
Yeah, and it got sent into overtime, and then the Panthers ended up losing that football game. Falcons ended up driving down the field and kicking a field goal to win the game. So I, just based off of that, I don't like that it's at 3.5, but I will take 3.5 because I have a lot of faith in the Falcons. So, what about you, Jacob? What are you taking?
At 3.5, I'm going to take the Panthers. 2 for 2, picking opposite. That's good.
Yep.
The last time Bryce played Desmond Ridder, it went well for Bryce. So I'll just keep the vibes high. Cotton Bowl vibes. Panthers.
All right, so let's move on to game number 3. We're talking Bengals-Browns here. I know that's what a lot of people have been waiting for.
The big one.
The big one here. Many of our fans here, Cincinnati fans. One thing I'll just get out of the way right now. I think both of us are picking the Bengals, so I'm just going to put that up there.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on Deshaun Watson? Because I have very little faith in him. Very little.
I Ask me again in a couple weeks. I don't want to plant my flag on Deshaun Watson yet. I feel like we had 3 years at 2 years starting at Clemson, plus 4 years in Houston, where 3 years in Houston, where he was unquestionably a top, I don't know, what to say, 10 quarterback in the league. That might be a little too far. You can probably shut that down a little bit. When he was playing in Houston, he was probably a top 5 quarterback in the league. And he was doing it year in and year out consistently. Now it's been over 20 games since he's played at a high level or even played at all. So I don't know. Would I be shocked if he came out and he's never what we knew Deshaun Watson to be ever again? No, I wouldn't be shocked. Would I be shocked if he comes out and goes for 5,000 yards this year?
That they were. They seem to always just kind of struggle, and they never get a hold of themselves. I think the only person I can remember in my time from ever watching football that ever came back from something like this and played at a high level, and it was only for a year, is Michael Vick. And that was a very special case scenario where that Eagles team, they were stacked. I mean, they had a lot of weapons. Their defense was really good. I don't know, man. I know that's probably a very similar situation to the Browns. They have a really good roster, but I don't know if they've got the coaching staff there that would allow them to propel them forward like the Eagles did with Andy Reid. So I just I don't know, man. I don't like Deshaun and his chances to ever get back to the way that he was, but I don't think that means that the Browns are completely out of anything, because that's not what makes them the Browns. Nick Chubb and their defense is what makes the Browns. And as they go, Nick Chubb goes, they go, in my opinion. And as long as Myles Garrett goes, they go on defense. So again, I'm going to pick the Bengals here. We'll have plenty of other time to talk about the Bengals on other shows. I'm not going to go too in depth on it because most of our fans here are Bengals fans. But Joe Burrow's contract didn't get signed today. I know there was a lot of speculation that was going to happen today. And I'm still worried since that show about T. Higgins' future here with the Bengals. It just seems like the longer that these contracts take to get done, that the more likely it is that T is not going to be here long term. And I hate thinking that in my mind, but as a fan, that's what I'm thinking right now. Is there any hope at all, Jacob, that is it that Joe Burrow, like, if that contract happens, that there's a chance, or is that chance already gone? Is it over?
I think there's a 0% chance T. Higgins is signed by week 1. I guess I'll put it that way. I think Burrow's going to get done this week. I think Burrow's done by the time we kick off against Cleveland. And for the first time, maybe since we started talking about Burrow's contract extension about a year ago, is it going to be longer than 5 years? Is it going to be that 7 to 10 year deal that we've been praying for and hoping for? The way he framed that, and I hate to do this, but the way he framed that quote, talking about how he wants to play here and they're working on it and they're ironing out the kinks and blah, 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 doesn't that make you feel like maybe this isn't just the standard reset the market, $53 million, here you go, 5 years, you're out the door, normal deal? Maybe this is a little bit longer. There's some more nuance to the structure. The money's getting moved around. I don't know, but I'm much more optimistic about the future of this team after the quotes today by Burrow. And something that doesn't get talked about enough with talking about T. Higgins is I don't know that Logan Wilson's deal gets done so early if there's not at least a future plan in place. Now, is that re-signing T? I don't know. Is that moving, tagging, and trading him, or whatever that is? I don't know. But I find it hard to believe that you're locking down a second linebacker before you at least have a plan in place long term for the Burrow, T, Chase conversation that's going to come up here in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Jacob. I tend to think I I don't tend to think about that after the players are signed, what that actually meant for the team. But, signing a second linebacker to a long-term deal, in hindsight, if they don't get a deal done with T because of money, that would seem very irresponsible almost, right? It's almost like, well, that money should have gone
Logan
towards.
Wilson's 4-year deal. Logan Wilson's 4-year deal is roughly a year and a half of what T. Higgins would cost. Like I don't think one necessarily has anything to do with the other, but if T does walk, there's going to be a whole lot of shots coming at the Bengals organization for how they chose to spend their money. Even though I don't know that one thing has to do with the other than the sheer fact of you bring someone back, you think you're going to bring more people back. And now I'm just optimistic about re-signing our guys. But I don't know. I think T and Jamar and Joe Burrow are all three in an echelon of their own where they're going to have to be paid such significant money to stay long term that's just what we're doing. Like that's just where we're at.
Agreed. I agree with that. Let's go ahead and move on to the Jags versus the Colts. This game, to me, a lot of people are just kind of going to go past it, not think too much about it. But I think there's a lot more to this game than meets the eye. -5 for the Jags, I think, is a little too high. Let me tell you why. Trevor Lawrence didn't play the greatest against the Colts. He's got a lot of weapons, and he's got Calvin Ridley coming back. He's got all the other weapons coming back, like drawing a blank here. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Zay
Jones, Evan Ingram.
Yeah, they're all coming back. I'm not really concerned about that as much as I am their offensive tackles. They have 2 of them. And last year, Trevor Lawrence was only sacked 31 times. And you might say, like, well, that's actually kind of a lot. It's really not. It's not that much compared to the rest of the NFL. And let me tell you, I've watched Trevor Lawrence and how he plays when he's under pressure, and it's not great. And I know you could say that for a lot of quarterbacks, but for a guy that we want to put on a pedestal to be on the top echelon of quarterbacks, that worries me a lot for his future. Now, the only reason I'm saying this for this game is because the Colts, they're returning a guy in Shaquille Leonard. DeForest Buckner is coming back stronger than ever. They've got 2 guys in Samson and Bucom and Kwity Paye that look to improve from their season a year ago. And it's not a good situation to be in where you're dealing with 2 new offensive tackles. I could get away with one and say that, yeah, the Jags probably have a really good shot of winning this game and covering this spread. But when you're dealing with 2 new ones and you're dealing with a very elite defensive line, an elite defensive front, 7, I tend to hesitate a little bit on just crowning a winner of a game. And not to mention, here's the devil's advocate. The Jaguars also have a very underrated pass rush. The Colts offensive line stinks. This is going to be a very messy game, in my opinion. I think this is a very messy game. I don't think there's any outright winners like they have kind of declared here. And you might -5 is pretty much declaring the Jags as a winner, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about spreads and what they mean, but -5 is very high for the NFL in terms of Week 1. What are your thoughts on this game?
This is maybe my favorite line of the entire week. I think Jacksonville's going to go out there and absolutely drag them. I mean, I think the Indianapolis Colts are a complete joke of a franchise. I don't think there's any chance that they even sniff a competitive game here. I mean, I think this is going to be the blowout of all blowouts. There's no even this is not even going to be on NFL Red Zone. If you spend your money, send it over to YouTube TV, you're not going to see Jags Colts because it's not going to be on there. The Jags are never getting to the red zone because it's 50-yard bombs, and the Colts are going 3 and out after every touchback. There's no Jonathan Taylor. What is Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson? Anthony Richardson couldn't throw at Florida. You think he's going to be able to throw with the Colts? I don't think so. No Jonathan Taylor to ease it off of him. I loved Anthony Richardson coming into the year because I thought, hey, he'll be able to hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor 22 times a game. He's not going to have to throw it a whole bunch. He's going to be all right. Those weapons, those subpar weapons in Indianapolis, that's not a big deal because they have Jonathan Taylor. Well, they don't for the first 4 weeks. And now Anthony Richardson is going to have the ball in his hands against the Jags, who are a top 4 team in the AFC. I mean, after the Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs, I'm taking the Jaguars. I think they're going to walk through that division. I love the Jaguars this year. If we're making picks every week, you're going to see that come up with time and time again. I absolutely love the Jaguars, and this week's no different. I mean, you touched on it with their pass rush against the Colts O-line. The Colts O-line has been regressing every year for what feels like my whole life. The Colts O-line was so bad when Andrew Luck was in the league that Andrew Luck, a generational talent, some people, Colin Cowherd, still talk about him maybe getting into the Hall of Fame. He retires because your O-line is so bad. And now you finally, after all these years and all these bridge quarterbacks, you finally take a chance on another franchise quarterback. And what do you give him? You don't lock up your franchise running back, and you give him a really bad O-line. Now, it's not Andrew Luck, and Anthony Richardson's not going to stand in the pocket and pass. And I'm not saying Anthony Richardson's even close to Andrew Luck as a prospect. But just the thought process of what worked last time, what didn't work last time. Now we have a new quarterback, and they're just doing the same thing. They're just doing the same thing, and I don't think it's going to work. I think the Colts are going to have a very bad year. I don't know how I feel about Shane Steichen as a coach in general. I have a hard time grading an Eagles offensive coordinator going to a team like the Colts because you're not going to have that talent at any of the 22 positions. You're worse across the board on offense. You don't have the offensive line that you had in Philadelphia that gave you the time to develop the offense for Jalen Hurts, to let him really run and use his legs to set up his arm. I think Anthony Richardson is going to have to be a running back this year. He's going to have to rush for 1,200 yards for the Colts to have a 500 record, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I hate the Colts. I can't stand the Colts, Casey.
Now, to clarify, I'm not defending what I said earlier, saying that the Colts are good. They're not good. They're not even going to be a 500 team in my opinion. But I do think that the line being at 5, I have more hesitation with the Jags, and you are very glowing about the Jags. I think there's a lot there that makes me worried, gives me pause. And we'll see how they do this week. I'll probably be able. Let me give myself 1 week to get on the Jaguars train. Right, give me this one game to see how they play with this front seven.
Fair enough.
I give a lot of stock to offensive line play in the trenches. Right, if the pass rush is not there for the Jags, if the offensive line is not going to protect Trevor Lawrence like they did last year, then why would we expect him to improve? And he didn't really have – I mean, he had 4,000 yards, and I think he had like 26 or 27 touchdowns. And Calvin Ridley will help a lot with that. But yes, sir, boy, I like trench warfare. That is what I think the NFL is pretty much predicated on, is if you've got good offensive line and a good defensive line, you're going to go places. And they lost their starting offensive tackles, one to the IR, or he was suspended, right? I can't remember right off the top of my head, but they're trotting out 2 new tackles for week 1. And, you know, I want to see Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker really do something, right? Trayvon Walker only had like 4 sacks last year, excuse me. And Josh Allen, 6. Like, those 2 are top 5 edge rushers, and they're not getting the quarterback more often than that. Makes me a little worried. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is more my hesitation is more with the Jags than it is the Colts. I don't think the Colts are really going anywhere, but I'm not going to sit here and act like their defense, at least the front 7, is not borderline elite. I think they have a really good front 7. Their weakness is going to be the secondary. It actually
for sure.
might be, I don't know if you've seen their secondary, I don't even know a guy on their
It's a
secondary.
joke.
I literally don't even know
It's really
one
bad.
single one
Yes.
of them, and it's really bad. So it's really going to depend on the key to this game. If we're going to go into keys of the game, is the Jaguars' offensive line, and can they protect against the Colts' defensive front? And if they can do that, they'll easily win this game. And a lot of people have the same take from a very popular sports analyst, um, Colin Coward, about how the Jags could win 13 games in their season. I'd love to see them win more than 10 games first. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at. I like to see some progress before I crown anyone an AFC number one, number one in the AFC. So that's kind of where I'm at with this game. Um, you are going to be picking the Jags, right? And
Very much so. Yeah, this is
I
my favorite pick of the week.
I can't sit here and pick the Colts. As much as I was glowing about, as
After
much
all
as
that,
after all that, I just can't. And you kind of convinced me, right? I tried to have an opposing argument. I don't like going with the crowd, but the Colts just
that's
stink,
fair.
man. The Colts just stink, and I don't know if there's any there's no light at the end of this tunnel, unless Anthony Richardson just pops off. And I had some faith in him, but he burnt me really bad last year. I saw him week 1 and thought, man, he looked really great against Utah. This kid could be a Heisman winner, and then he just kind of squanders the rest of the college football season, and I'll never forgive him for that. So I'm gonna move on to the Bucks versus the Vikings, and this is the Vikings are my biggest question mark of the season. Um, they're just weird, right? They had so many one score win games, right? And the joke is, if it's not a primetime game, Kirk Cousins is going to win the football game, right? And
Hmm.
they went ahead and they cut Dalvin Cook. They lose pieces like Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Adam Thielen, Patrick Peterson, and then they replace all of those guys with different pieces like Byron Murphy, Marcus Davenport, Jordan Addison. And I'm just like, there's so many new pieces to this team, and they were already so weird last year. I don't know what to make of them this year. Minnesota -6. Um, Part of me wants to say that's too much, right? That's too much for them to get over, because the Buccaneers defense is really really good, but maybe there's something there where Baker Mayfield is really bad. Like that is what they're telling me, is that they think that this Buccaneers offense is terrible, like bottom of the league, and I just don't think so. Like there's too many pieces there, like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and I think their biggest question mark on the Buccaneers offensive is the offensive line, and they're returning Tristan Wirfs. I think Ryan Jensen. I think he's on IR, but I don't know if he's out for the season.
He is out for the year.
He's out for the year. Well, that's very unfortunate for
He
him,
had
man.
he avoided surgery last season on his knee and took a experimental stem cell injection, which allowed him to play last season. But the ramifications of it knocked him out for this year and probably have ended his career. It's a pretty sad story.
That is very sad.
All that to get back on the field to try to make a playoff push, and then he's not throwing his career away, because I don't want to say that, because every game, you don't know what position everyone's in. He obviously wanted to play last year, but that's got to be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and maybe just because of that, they think that the offensive line is just going to be in shambles. It kind of was last year, but it wasn't that bad. Like, a lot of people want to make it out to be like the Seattle Seahawks offensive line, or just name any other team like the Bears offensive line, who gave up like 50 sacks for Justin Fields. I mean, this team was not that bad. It was not that bad. I think it was a many multitude of factors, a very basic offense, and Tom Brady just aging, that kind of just derailed their season. And they were right there honestly. Like they could have won a few more games, swung their way, and made it to a wild card spot. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about them any longer, but I will say that Minnesota -6, that is one of the highest spreads this week. Um, I think it's a little high. I think it's a little high because I think the key is the Buccaneers defensive line versus the Vikings offensive line. Kirk Cousins was sacked 46 times last year, the sixth most in the NFL. And it just seemed like last year they just kept getting lucky and winning these really tight games. So I think the luck is out. That's kind of where I'm getting at. I think the luck is done. That doesn't tend to transcend more than one season. I don't know what your thoughts are on the Vikings, but they're a big question mark for me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm not taking one score wins from last year, especially as many as they had, and translating into the next year. I just don't think that is a model that can consist from year in and year out, and you can keep winning. And they don't win big games. I mean, it's the first thing you said. You said, is it prime time? No. Well, then Kirk's has a chance. Well, that's what we mean every time. And how do you get to a Super Bowl? You have to win primetime games. You have to win those big games. And that's why the Vikings, I don't think, with their current situation, will ever do it, which is tough because they have a guy like Justin Jefferson, and they have TJ Hawkinson locked up now. They had Dalvin Cook for these years in the past, and they didn't really do anything. So I don't think that's going to change now. The 6 does seem high because I really don't love the Vikings, but the Buccaneers are bad. I mean, you want to talk about Deshaun Watson falling off after not playing for 20 games? What's going to happen to Baker? Baker was already not good, and now he hasn't played for half a season. He lost his job to P.J. Walker last year, and now he's going to go start for the Buccaneers. I don't think the Bucs are going to be any good. They had a whole lot of offseason troubles with Devin White, who's the anchor of that defense. I don't know. I think the Bucs are trending down and trending down fast.
Who are you picking this game?
I'm going to take Minnesota -6 just so I don't have to bet on Baker Mayfield.
Whew. Man, we've picked a lot of opposites as of late. And I'm going to continue that trend, man. 6 is a lot. And I think that the Buccaneers were not as bad as they were on paper last year. It's really tough. I will admit, this is a hard pill for me to swallow. I don't like betting on Baker Mayfield. But there's just something about the Vikings that gives me a lot of hesitation. There's just something there that I just can't. I don't know if they're legit. They have a lot of warts, right? They just have a lot of warts that I just can't get over. So, moving on to the next game, Titans versus the Saints.
Now, I said it about a couple games ago that you were never going to see the Jags-Colts game on Red Zone because the Jags were going to be beating them too bad. You're not going to see the Titans-Saints game on Red Zone because neither team's going to get anywhere near the Red Zone. I mean, this game is going to be one of the worst games of the week to watch. Don't even put it on your TV. They give you multiple games per slate for a reason. Take one of those other ones. I mean, you want to watch Derek Carr play Ryan Tannehill? I know I don't. They don't have Alvin Kamara. Jamal Williams is fun. Jamal Williams led the league in touchdowns last year, 17 touchdowns. And for the first 3 weeks, he's going to be the featured back in New Orleans, along with Keandre Miller, the TCU rookie that led them on their improbable run to the national championship last year. So that backfield could be fun, but I just don't think Derek Carr moves the needle for that team. The thing that they do have going for them, though, is the same thing you talked about with the Atlanta Falcons. They play in the NFC South. And the NFC South is horrible. The NFC South is a joke. Let me read you the Saints' schedule. The Saints this year go Ryan Tannehill, Jordan Love, Baker twice, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, 2 Desmond Ritters, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Matt Stafford, and then one real hard one against Trevor Lawrence. But that's the only good quarterback that they play, the only good proven quarterback that they play. There's no reason the Saints with Derek Carr, Chris Olave, once Michael Thomas, maybe he can stay healthy. The last year Michael Thomas played in the league, he had 150 catches and broke the receptions record. Him and Chris Olave could be right up there with the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. Chris Olave and Michael Thomas can be that duo. They can be that good. It's just, are they going to do it? And can they stay afloat for 3 weeks? Can they go 1-2 or even 2-1 without Alvin Kamara? Because you know how much of that offense he is. I love their defense. I like the Saints this year, but they're not going to be fun to watch. They're not going to be fun to watch at all.
Well, I mean, Derek Carr, he had an MVP caliber type season in his disposable in under his belt, right? He can be a good quarterback, and just like you said, the two receivers, Olave and Michael Thomas, there's potential there. There's a lot of potential there. I think this Saints offense is underrated right now. I think there's a lot of hesitation because they just really haven't had a quarterback there in a long time. Now, Carr last year had Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and Hunter Renfrow, and you see where they ended up. I mean, it doesn't always equal one-to-one transition there. There's not always a bounce back for players in their careers, and I just don't know if Carr. I don't know if he's going to bounce back. I hope he does. I really hope he does. I really like him as a player. I have pause from it. I think the first 3 games for Kamara being out isn't that big of a deal. I don't think that derails the whole season. But like you said, the team that they're playing, the Titans, they just stink. And I have a stink list. They're with the Browns in stench. Like they're terrible. I hate Tannehill. I hate most of their offense. I think Derrick Henry is just bound to get injured now. He's at that age where you're just waiting for something to happen to him, and then he's never going to be the same again. And then their defense just doesn't look anything like they were when they were the number 1 team in the AFC. It's just, I don't know what to make of them. What I will say though is DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that pushes them over the edge. The Titans, they stink, man. They just stink. I don't know what else to say. They're not a good football team. I wouldn't want to watch this game either. I'm taking the Saints -3.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Saints as well. I hate the Titans this year.
All right. So
I also wonder about the Titans. How long can Derrick Henry do this? Derrick Henry has been backpacking that team to the playoffs for years now. How long can he keep this up? It can't be forever.
I've been warning my friends every time we do fantasy. I'm like, listen, don't take Derrick Henry this year. I mean, it was the start last year when he got hurt. I don't know how many games it was, but that was the start. That is the start of the decline of Derrick Henry. You heard it here first. And I hate being the guy that declares anyone's downfall, but don't take him. Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. You're going to regret it because the dude has had a lot of touches in his career. Yes, he's one of the best running backs of all time, but at some point, something's going to give, right? You get that many touches in your career, and things are just not going to work the same way. And this is one of the worst Titans teams that he's ever been on. I don't like it. I don't like his prospects going forward. I'm going to avoid him in fantasy, and I think you should too. That's your PSA announcement for Derrick Henry and my thoughts on Derrick Henry. So
the Titans also drafted Tajay Spears this year. I know UC fans have a little bit of a memory about him, but Tajay Spears played at Tulane this last season, and he was no slouch. I mean, he had a great year. He was one of the best backs in all of college football last year. I mean, he had 1,500 yards closing in on 1,600. He's getting up to 20 touchdowns. He has 19 touchdowns last year. He's a young kid. I don't think Derrick Henry's going to be the bell cow back in that offense very much longer.
I don't either. I don't think that, I don't know what his contract situation is. I think it's almost up, if I'm not mistaken. And I just don't see this.
I believe he's a free agent either this offseason or next.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see. I don't see the Titans even re-signing him if that goes to prove anything how we feel about him. But Tyjae Spears, I think that's a really good secondary back for them. I think he provides a lot of dynamic play for them that they don't necessarily have right now. So yeah, and I know you maybe want to talk about DeAndre. I already gave you my opinions. I don't think he really moves the needle for this team, but he's an older receiver. I don't think he's quite the same as he was before. I don't think he's the DeAndre Hopkins that we know and love. I think he's a little bit worse, but not by a lot.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. My computer just died, and it won't charge. My charging port seems to be broken, so we're rocking with the phone for the rest of this.
That's okay. That's all right.
I apologize for that. That's a mess. I'll have to take that into the store tomorrow and get that figured
out. Yeah, I mean, this is preseason for us, so there's been a lot here that has not gone the way that we wanted, but that's okay. We're here to just kind of stumble through for the first episode and catch our stride week 2 or 3.
We'll get better from here.
Yeah. You want to move on to, or did we make our picks? We both picked the Saints, right?
Yeah, we both picked the Saints.
All right, let's move on to the 49ers and the Steelers. The team that we all just love, right? Pittsburgh Steelers. Right. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Because I don't know if you watched my show long ago. This was like a month ago where I hosted as Mac on the mic.
Of course.
I had a very strong take about the Steelers. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
You can take it.
Let's just say I'm worried about the Steelers. I think that they are. I think they have a chance to be legit. Every year they manage to go above 500. We'll start with that. Whenever Watt is in the lineup, they are well above 500. Last year he was out for half the season, and I mean, the team itself doesn't need to have a quarterback perform at a top 10 type level to get over the hump. You saw like a couple years ago when Ben Roethlisberger was still playing, he was awful. He couldn't throw past 10 yards, and they managed to win a lot of games, like 12, 13 games. Now, they didn't go far into the playoffs, but that team, that core, is still there in Pittsburgh. And let me tell you, Najee Harris, and you know him pretty well because, Alabama. And I think last year was a bit of a regression year. I don't think that continues. I think he gets back to where he was his rookie season. They've got a much better offensive line, an offensive line that really I think is going to love running the football. A lot of those guys are just maulers, including their draft pick this season from Georgia. That kid just loves to maul people. And then they got the tight end to pair with him. Loves to maul people. Now, what do I think about their passing attack? I mean, if Kenny Pickett is even marginally better than he was last year, I think that this team is scary, right? Like, he last year was like barely below average. Like, it's hard to explain, but if he does anything slightly better than he did last year, they're above a 9-8 team. You know what I mean? Like, there's not that much room for him to improve, for them to be that much better. Like, the team is not going when Pickett goes. They're going when the defense goes. They go when they have a really good running attack, and that's how they're going to win football games. They're going to be able to just be a game manager, and they're going to just run the ball down people's throats and just play really good defense. Now, unfortunately for them, they play the 49ers, which are better at both of those things. And, I mean, this is a game where the 49ers could just blow them out of the water because they're better at all the things that I just listed that the Steelers are going to try to do this season, and do it in a way where the 49ers, I think, they're my Super Bowl team this year. Just to let everyone know, the additions that they made on defense to get even better on the defensive line is pretty scary. I think they put the whole league on notice. They were already really, really good on defense, and then they just go like, oh, we'll get Hargrave on here. Like, what? What are you talking about? And they didn't even really have – I don't believe they had CMC for like half the season, right? They're going to have him.
Right, they didn't.
Mm-hmm. And so Purdy too. Like, I got killed last year talking about Brock Purdy. I just wanted to see him play more than a 3-game stretch, and then he just kept going. Like, he kept playing really well. I want to see him keep going on that, and I think he can. That's the thing, is I think the Kyle Shanahan offense allows him to play really, really good football, and I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to stop that. I have the 49ers here at -2. I think that's really low for them, but that doesn't indicate how I feel about the Steelers long term. I think this is just a really bad matchup for the Steelers, in all honesty. I think they're going to get out-muscled in the ways that they want to play the football game. So what are your thoughts on the two teams?
Niners -2 feels very stinky to me. That line should be higher. There's no reason that's 2 points. To me, that feels like a very easily 4, 5, 6 point spread, and you're giving us 2 points. Makes me kind of want to take the Steelers. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The 49ers, I think the 49ers are in a very weird position this year because they announced Brock Purdy is going to start week 1. Great, fine. What happens when he doesn't look unbeatable? What happens when he loses? Are you going to go to Sam Darnold? Are you really going to put Sam Darnold in a competitive football game when you're trying to win a Super Bowl this season? I don't have faith in a team that's one injury away from starting Sam Darnold. I know everyone's one injury away, but it seems like Kyle Shanahan's system, we always say it's built for any quarterback, but is it built for any quarterback? It seems like every quarterback you put in Kyle Shanahan's system just maxes out at, and most teams would kill for it, like a 1 or 2 seed and lose in the second or third round of the playoffs in the conference championship. Like, at some point, Kyle Shanahan's system is the cap, and I think we might be seeing it with the 49ers. They are out of money. After they signed Nick Bosa today, they are out of money. They have no money left. They are stuck with Brock Purdy at quarterback, whether he works or not. And they have money locked up everywhere else. So if he doesn't work, they're going to be in a really dark spot really soon. I like the Steelers +2. I like the Steelers this year as well. Not as much as you do in the sense of actually competing. I think the Steelers might go below 500, but that's a product of playing in the AFC North and the rest of their schedule. I think the other 3 teams in the AFC North are in the playoffs this year. That's part of my gripe with the Steelers. But yeah, I'm taking the Steelers +2, and I don't really like either of these teams long term.
Wow, I was not expecting that at all. So you're down on the Niners.
I am down on the Niners. I think their defense is incredible. I don't know if they need to score more than 2, maybe 3 scores a game to win, but at some point you're gonna have to score, and I don't think the Niners can do so. I don't trust Debo to stay healthy and produce. It seems like we're getting one or the other with him. He had a year of incredible production, then he injury riddled, and then when he was healthy, he wasn't really producing. I think Brandon Ayuk could save that offense, I think if Christian McCaffrey plays almost a full third receiver role, that could change my tone a little bit. But I don't trust Brock Purdy. I know he proved me wrong every single time he stepped on the field last year, but going into this year, I'm going to keep the same energy, and I just don't trust Brock Purdy.
By the way, I just want to let our audience know thank you for watching with us so far. We are kind of going over the hour, and we're not even like halfway done with the games. We'll try to be a lot quicker next time. We're just getting through preseason week 1 for us. It was a lot of planning and a lot of rushed things that happened today, but we'll clean it up here next time. But I also wanted to just say that me and Jacob, we're not doing the opposite take on purpose. This is our genuine
not at
feelings.
all.
And it has surprised me up to this point that we have literally been on opposite sides of these takes for pretty much all these games. It is
Almost
very
every game.
Almost every game we've had an opposite take. And I think we both respect each other a lot in our opinions here. I think we both have a love for the game. I expected you to be very high on the 49ers along with me, but that's okay. I think we both see that the Steelers have something there. It's probably just not built for this year. You know,
You said it perfectly. You said exactly what I've been trying to articulate about the Steelers, and I haven't been able to. They won 9 games last year, and they weren't very good. Najee, if Najee goes back to half of his rookie season, the half of that running back we saw as a rookie, and Kenny doesn't even have to move at that point. Kenny can still just be below average, and they're winning 10 games.
Right.
The Steelers scare me for sure. And, I mean, if T.J. Watt can stay healthy, if Minka Fitzpatrick can stay healthy, that defense is great. We got to move on because I hate saying nice things about the Steelers.
Yeah, let's move on to Cardinals versus Commanders. Another one of those games where I don't know if anyone's going to want to watch, to be honest.
We got some bad ones this week, Casey, but at least they gave them to us in week 1 because we're so excited for football that I'm going to watch Sam Howell and Clayton Tune go out there and throw that thing just like anyone else.
So
speaking of Sam Howell, that's the perfect start for me because I love Sam Howell. I am all in on Sam Howell. I think the NFL made one of the greatest mistakes they made not taking Sam Howell and letting him fall all the way down to the second round. Sam Howell, before his senior season, or it might not have been his senior year, but before his last year at North Carolina, he was projected to go 1-1. He was locked in to a top 3 pick. Then he loses his offensive coordinator. He loses all of his weapons. He loses both of his running backs. And then what happens? Oh, Sam Howell doesn't look great. Shocker. Then he falls to the second round. The Commanders jump on it, and now he's finally getting a chance. I think Sam Howell is incredibly talented, and I think Sam Howell can lead this Commanders team to a competitive record in the NFC.
So here's why I kind of agree with you, and it's not because I've done a lot of research on the matter. It's more just what the Commanders are telling you, right? They have him starting over Jacoby Brissett, a very solid backup and a guy who's had plenty of starting time. A lot of people, when they got Jacoby, thought that he was going to be the starting quarterback over Howell. Well, that didn't happen because there's something there with Howell that they see. There's lots of chatter, and it's all coming from Washington. I get that. But they wish that they would have started him sooner. That is the conversation that they had was, wow, we had something with Howell. We wish we would have had him starting sooner. We could have won a lot more football games that way. That and the offensive coordinator, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head.
Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City.
Eric Bieniemy. He's not going to have some Joe Schmo starting at quarterback for him. He's just not. He's going to get up in that guy's face, and he's going to be the best possible candidate for the job. And I think that says it all, right? I think that in itself makes you have to believe that he is worthy of that starting spot, right? That he is the best candidate for the job as it stands currently. So you being on Sam Howell, I don't think that's wild. I don't think that's a crazy take. He was a lock to be a top 5 not even top 5. He was like top 2. It was like him and some other guy for quarterback. I can't remember who, but you're right. I mean, he was dealt a bad hand his senior season, gets drafted second in the second round, and just sits behind a team that's just trying to not tank, but they were just, rebuilding.
They weren't
And,
competing.
Yeah, they weren't competing. I mean, Chase Young was hurt all last year. Now he's healthy, which we'll talk about that here soon. This team is not that far away either from being a wild card team. They were really close to being a wild card team last year. They went 8-1, I think, or they were.
Taylor Heineke got them there.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any marginal improvement, again, marginal improvement from a quarterback, they're gonna be above 500, which it's really tough to say that when it's the NFC East, or the least, as a lot of people like to call them. But I think, you have you got the last place schedule. I like that. I like the chances for the Commanders to make some noise.
The other thing you have to prop up not a rookie, but a first-year quarterback is you have elite weapons. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson is an elite receiving duo. I mean, that duo, again, just like we said with Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, those two could enter themselves in that discussion of who are the top duos in the league at the end of this year. I think both of those receivers are really special. And then Brian Robinson, the running back from Alabama that they have down there, he runs hard. He's a short yards between the tackles back, and he's a perfect change of pace from Antonio Gibson, the college wide receiver that I still can't give up on. Antonio Gibson is, I don't know what the comparison is, but for me, I just can't quit. I love Antonio Gibson, and I've loved Antonio Gibson for years. He played receiver in college. He had 1,300 receiving yards in college, and he never caught over 50 passes in the NFL. I think the Commanders have just been misusing him as an elite pass-catching running back option, and I think Eric Bieniemy is going to unlock that, and that offense can be very, very fun to watch.
That's the other underrated thing is if you believe in Eric Bieniemy and what he can potentially do for an offense that's been struggling to be dynamic, he's going to give you that scheme that you need. And I won't also let you get away without mentioning Dyami Brown and Curtis Samuel. Those two are also really solid number 3 and number 4, whichever way you want to stack that. And I believe Dyami Brown actually played with Sam Howell. So there could be some chemistry there. I think there's a lot to like about the Commanders. I think they're just stuck in a really hard division, and that's why they weren't any better than they were last year. If they're in the NFC South, they win the NFC South. Like, hands down. They're destroying that division. So let's also talk about their defense. Chase Young being back, and let's not forget Montez Sweat, and Deron Payne, and Jonathan Allen. Those 4, not even a couple years ago, I think it was the Tampa Bay Super Bowl, which was 3 years ago, I believe.
3 years ago. 2020.
They were the sack leaders. They were the NFL sack leaders, those 4, and they're all still together. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future for the Commanders, and I think there's nothing wrong with being high on them and Sam Howell. I think you're right. This is one thing I think you're not going to convince me. You're not going to convince us otherwise. And for this game, -7, the Cardinals are the worst out of all the teams in the NFL by far. So
is this the most obvious tank we've had in a while? I mean, the season hasn't even started yet, and I think everyone and their mother knows that the Cardinals are trying to lose football games this year.
Yeah, and
they're not even trying to be competitive building a roster. They cut the only quarterback that had been on their team for longer than 2 months.
Yeah, it's a tank job. It's a disgrace, honestly. It's tired. I don't know. This is like one of those scenarios where you ask yourself, is it even like a legal, like not legal, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like,
right? Is this allowed?
Yeah, is this allowed?
Are we letting this happen?
Are we letting this happen? And you gotta feel for some of the guys on their team, like Zach Ertz and Marquise Brown, guys that have been there for a while that, they're just they're stuck. Like they're
What about
along for the ride.
the guys whose names you don't know that are on the last year of their 3-year deal, the last year of their 2-year deal? They finally got one shot in the NFL, and they have to play on the Cardinals that are actively trying to lose games, and you're basically handicapping these however many players from actually having a shot at playing in the NFL. There's nothing in the world that grinds my gears more than tanking. I mean, I just absolutely hate it.
Yeah, and I what is the hope there? Like Kyler Murray comes back and you still you hope that he shows something, or it's weird because they can't really trade him. He's hurt right now. He'll be out for like 4 weeks. I think he's on the IR. He'll be back.
He also has an incredibly undesirable contract.
Correct. And I think if they are going to tank for the number one, it's clearly for a quarterback. And
the other thing that we have to remember is they have the Texans' first-round pick as well. They're
right.
going to have projected 2 top 5 picks. And if you move Kyler Murray, say what you want about Kyler Murray, he's netting you a pretty serious package. That's a legitimate NFL quarterback that can win games right now at a high level. Healthy Kyler Murray is, at worst, a top 15 quarterback in the in the NFL. Kyler Murray is no joke. And if they're going to throw this season away and go get Caleb Williams, one of the other 31 teams is going to have a lottery ticket dropped on their front, a winning lottery ticket dropped on their doorstep, because they're going to be able to get first overall pick Kyler Murray for a package of probably mid-round picks. Some team is going to have the biggest jumpstart to a rebuild since Thom went to Tampa. Kyler Murray is going to go somewhere and make the number one receiver on that team a top 15 receiver in the league. He's going to make that offense a top 15 offense in the league. He's going to make that team a contender. The Cardinals are making a horrible mistake, and another team's going to get very lucky.
You couldn't have said it better. This team is, I think, making a very big mistake. Now, what if they don't pick a quarterback and they have 2 top 5 picks to pick the best talent out there, and maybe even possibly trade that pick to get more picks? Then maybe they look like geniuses. But I don't know. It's very fishy that it just looks like a tank job, and it's doesn't look good for Cardinals fans.
Not at all.
-7's a lot, but is it really against the Cardinals?
I'm going to say something that I'm probably going to regret in a couple weeks here. I don't really care what the number is. I'm just going to bet against the Cardinals for the start of the year.
Yeah.
Who on the Cardinals excites you? Hollywood, maybe? I don't know. Nothing about the Cardinals is fun to watch. I'm betting against them until they tell me to stop.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that methodology. I'll probably be betting against them regardless of what the spread says. We'll know a lot more week 1, just a general gist of how bad it's going to be. If you've seen some of the highlights of their preseason and their camp, it does not look good at all. It's looked terrible. So we'll see how they do week 1. It's not going to be pretty. I'll just put it like that. Let's go ahead and move on to Texans versus the Ravens.
Not for us, excluding us in Cincinnati that despise the Ravens and everything in Baltimore. This game's going to be fun to watch for a minute, because what the Ravens do to rookie quarterbacks can only be described as cruel and unusual punishment. No rookie quarterback plays the Ravens and does even remotely well. I think, as one of the biggest C.J. Stroud guys here, he's going to look horrible on Sunday. He's going to look absolutely horrible. Every Bryce Young fan is going to be victory lapping everywhere. CJ's a bust, yada, yada, yada. But it's just the Ravens defense. The Ravens are -10. I think you could double that and make it 20. I think the Ravens are just going to run circles around the Texans. It's just a clear example of one team that's ready to compete and ready to win a Super Bowl, and another team that's just getting started with the rebuild.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. John Harbaugh is 21-7 versus rookies since 2008. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all you really need to know about how dominant they've been. Their defense schematically just does a number to rookie quarterbacks. I don't know why. It's just a lot of exotic blitzes that they just haven't seen yet, and it really confuses them and makes them have really bad decisions. But
The other thing I expect from Baltimore is in week 1 against a questionable defense and an even more questionable secondary, they're going to let their new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, let that thing rip. They're going to let him really get a feel for that offense and get a feel for those weapons. And I don't know that they're letting up anytime soon. I think they're going to take the top off that defense, try to let everyone know, hey, Odell's back. Hey, Zay Flowers is here. The old Ravens, not around anymore. New Ravens, throw the ball around. New Ravens, play 21st century offense. I think the Ravens are going to try to make a statement here, and it's going to be a statement that I don't think Bengals fans are going to be excited to see.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think that they're really going to let it rip. I mean, they've got Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr. And that, if it all works out the way they intended, is a really dynamic passing attack. And not to mention, too, like, even if they are going to try to throw the ball over the place, the Texans' defense last year ranked literally the bottom at stopping the run. They were god-awful. So even if they didn't want to, go all in with Todd Monken's offense right away, they'd be okay because they're going to probably run for 200 yards if they wanted to. The Ravens are just going to have their way with this team. It's a team that's still rebuilding, a team that has a rookie quarterback. They don't have a lot of great offensive weapons. -10 doesn't seem all that. Out of all the spreads, this is the highest spread all week, and it doesn't really seem that crazy to me. I don't know what you think.
If I ever see an NFL spread above 10.5, that's just an automatic take the plus. So I'm glad that they didn't throw the extra half point on there, so I can at least take the Ravens. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about here other than the Ravens are going to do what the Ravens have been doing since John Harbaugh took over as head coach, and that's dominate lesser teams.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to Packers versus the Bears. For those of you that don't know, my boss and what would be Jacob's boss if he was still here at Chatterbox. I guess you still are. You're an intern with us, but our boss, Trace Fowler, is a Packers fan, and he's watched a lot of Packers games and he's watched a lot of Bears games, and he's dubbed Justin Fields the fidget spinner. Not a true quarterback, but a number 1 running back. I believe that your take is that he's a good quarterback and that he'll prove that this season. And I think that I would have to agree with that. Am I right in that assumption?
You didn't go nearly far enough.
Oh.
You said I think Justin Fields is just a good quarterback. I think Justin Fields is competing for the MVP of the league this year. I think Justin Fields is a top handful quarterback in the league. I absolutely love Justin Fields. I love what the Bears did this offseason. They obviously have a ways to go before that roster is a legitimate contender for a Super Bowl, but they watched their quarterback go out there and struggle last year. And everyone said you need to add weapons and you need to make the O-line better for it to give him a chance to succeed. So what'd they do? They went out there and they added weapons and they added to the O-line. What more can you ask for? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But they went out there and they answered the questions that were being asked of them with the people that were available. And now they're going to come into this season as a 1-point favorite against the Packers, start kicking off the post-Aaron Rodgers era. And what better way for Justin Fields to take a stranglehold on the NFC North that he's going to have for the next decade and just dominate the Packers. And I hope he does it. I hope he does it. That'd be awesome. But even if he doesn't, even if he starts slow, I have the utmost faith in Justin Fields this year. I mean, he's shown that he can run at an NFL level in the NFL. Obviously, he ran for 1,000 yards last year. He came very close to breaking the single season rushing record. He was not a runner at Ohio State. He ran the ball, but he was a thrower first. His arm was what got him drafted in the top 10. Justin Fields, everyone knows he's a dual threat quarterback, but emphasis on the dual threat. No one was saying, there were no questions to have Justin Fields switch to running back or switch to wide receiver or blah, blah, blah at the combine like there are for other quarterbacks every year. Justin Fields was a quarterback, and there was no doubt about that. And he's going to prove everyone wrong this year, and he's going to prove me right.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Justin Fields this year. If he's going to do it, it's going to be this year. I think they've put enough around him to make him show his true colors, so to speak. And I think it starts with DJ Moore. I think he's a true number one that's just been stuck on a really bad Panthers team with no quarterback. And he's been a 1,000-yard receiver time and time again. Now he's got a chance to do it with talent around him, with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and not to mention like Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, Roshan Johnson. This offense is underrated. Let's just get that out of the way. It's underrated right now, and I think they're going to show a lot. And if they show a lot this week against the Packers, who they truly are, and they're going to do it against a dynamic duo edge rush with Preston Smith and
Rashawn
Gary, and they've got Jair Alexander at corner, and that defense is good. It's not great, but it's good, and it's a good test, right? It's a good barometer. We're gonna know exactly who Justin Fields is moving forward based off of this one game. And I love how we haven't even mentioned the fact that their defense has improved a lot too. I think that also helps with Justin Fields' progression as well. Sometimes having a good defense can alleviate some of the pressures of being a quarterback. They went out and got
Tremaine Edmonds. They paid Tremaine Edmonds massive money for an off-ball linebacker.
Yannick Ngakoue, and DeMarcus Walker to get some more edge threats, and they shored up some issues on that defense that I think they're one or two players away from to begin with. And I think Yannick, great addition. I think he's bounced around the league a lot, but I think that's exactly what they needed. Just enough, right? Just another added layer of pressure for this defense to get home with. And I like the Bears. Here's the problem I have with the Bears and the Packers and just the whole NFC North in general is just the Vikings, right? I think they're the biggest question mark as to whether or not the Bears are the division winner or not. And, if the Vikings come out there and they just win a bunch of random games, then, yeah, maybe the Bears don't make it. Maybe they just barely miss the playoffs. But I think the Bears should be the odds-on favorite, in my opinion, besides the Lions, to get that wild card spot. So I'm assuming you're taking the Bears -1 here.
I am taking the Bears -1. I like the Bears a lot this year, but I just wanted to touch on the Packers real quick. For all intents and purposes, Jordan Love is a rookie quarterback. We should be talking about Jordan Love the same way we're talking about Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson. He's a rookie quarterback. We don't know anything. The one game we saw when Aaron Rodgers, was out, blah, 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 I don't care. That wasn't his team. That was Aaron Rodgers' team, and he was stepping in. Now he's the guy. What can Jordan Love do? I'm not in or out on Jordan Love. I think a lot of the things I said about Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers equipping that roster to suit a rookie quarterback apply here, but in a different way. They might not have the weapons. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, young weapons, part of the reason Aaron Rodgers left. I understand that. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are probably the best backfield in the NFL. Having a run game of that level with that change of pace, being able to keep both guys' legs fresh, keeping the pressure off of Jordan Love, the Packers have done a very good job of giving Jordan Love the ability to slide in there, and it shouldn't be that hard. Now, I know he's playing NFL football, and that's obviously hard, but they also have what might be the best O-line in the whole league when they're healthy. Jordan Love should not be being touched back there very often. Teams are going to have to respect the run, so they're not going to be dropping 7, 8 guys in pressure. In coverage. I think Jordan Love's going to succeed. I don't know if Jordan Love's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be good enough to keep the Packers in the hunt in the weak NFC.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think, yeah, I agree with you. I agree. You ready to move on to the Raiders versus Broncos?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
The Broncos certainly take the cake of most let down, most depressing team of last season. That's clear. They're running away with that title. And they're favorites in week 1. Are we really hopping back on the train? The NFL forced us to watch so many Broncos games last year. And then they're walking them out here against the Raiders week 1, -4, and they think we're all just going to forgive and forget. No way. But Sean Payton takes over for the Broncos. That's a massive improvement over Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett, even before he proved that he wasn't ready to coach in the NFL, it was his first gig. He hadn't proven himself. He was a coordinator for a Hall of Fame coach, or a Hall of Fame quarterback. What does that really tell you about his ability? I don't know. And it obviously proved that he didn't do very well. So adding Sean Payton to that offense, I think gives Russell Wilson the best chance he has at reviving his career. I think this was a godsend for Russell Wilson, and it might be the thing that gets the Broncos back on track with this massive contract extension, a massive trade. You put all your chips in one basket, and Sean Payton's going to have to salvage that team.
Yeah, and when Sean Payton called out Nathaniel Hackett, I decided to do a little research on it. They said that, Sean Payton said that, they were getting a lot of penalties. Oh, they were the most penalized team in all the NFL last year. So that tells you pretty much all that you need to know, that they were not very well coached last year. And they are going to be coached by a guy who's not going to stand for that crap. So it's Sean Payton season, like Elliot just said there. And I hope that he can turn Russell Wilson around, because I think when Russell is good, I think the NFL is good. That's kind of where my mindset has been for a while. I wanted him to be a really good quarterback in Denver, mainly because I wanted to see Patrick Mahomes go down because I'm a hater. But at the same time, I think the dude just fell off a cliff that no one saw coming. I don't think he's that bad. Like, I refuse to believe he goes from being a top 8 quarterback in the NFL. I won't give him top 5, a top 8 quarterback, to being maybe one of the worst in the NFL. It doesn't happen that fast. So I really hope that they figure it out. They've got the playmakers to do it. Javonte Williams, running back, very good. Jerry Jeudy, very good. Cortland Sutton, very good. All those guys.
Our baby boy, our favorite, backing up Javonte, Samaje Perine out there now.
Samaje Perine, yep. Can't forget him.
Can't forget him.
All those guys are capable of having 1,000-yard seasons. Like, they're all talented. It's just a matter of putting this team in a position to win. Do they have the scheme to do it? Do they have the discipline to do it? I think that changes this year. But, for this game specifically, I think this says more about where the Raiders are than where the Broncos are. Because the Raiders, to me, are just an absolute mess right now. Like, the Chandler Jones situation is very strange. I don't know what's going on there. He can't even work out in the team's practice facility. That's really
And the
strange.
team won't comment on it.
Yeah, I mean,
So no one knows what's actually happening.
no one knows. And they go from Derek Carr to Jimmy G, and that seems like a downgrade to me. Now, maybe they think that he can be a game manager, but I don't know. Like,
I think the Derek Carr relationship with the Las Vegas Raiders was so soured that any even close to lateral move was a positive. I think both sides needed a change of scenery. I think he had run his course in Vegas, and he needed to get out, and Vegas had seen as much as they could see, and they had to let him go. I think a change of scenery was necessary for both guys. I think Jimmy G starts under, I'll say under 10 games for the Raiders. I think they're in the conversation with the Cardinals to start really shutting this thing down early and thinking about getting some top end players in this draft, because there's no way that they can compete in the AFC West. They just can't. They can't. And there's no way they can compete for the AFC wild card with the rest of the teams in the AFC and the records that I expect them to have. So what are you really playing for? To pick 15th? To pick 13th? Like, I fully expect to see Aiden O'Connell at some point this year for the Raiders. They took him in the 7th round out of Purdue. I think they're going to start him at some point this year, and that's when we're going to see these lines get up to 12 and a half, 13 and a half. With the draft class coming out this year, teams are going to start shutting it down early. Teams with no talent, and outside of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, which, funny enough, are probably some of the best players at their position offensively, the Raiders have nothing else on offense.
yeah. And what's crazy is if you look at their schedule last year, and when I was doing the research for this game, it kind of surprised me, but it told a story. They lost 9 one-score games, and all of them were in different ways, and it would flip-flop between whether it was an offensive issue or a defensive issue. They were never in sync. They were always just out of sorts. Neither the offense or defense could just get it together for 1 week. And part of that is just the players that were on the squad. And another part of that too is the leadership on the team. I'm going to go as far as to say as that I don't believe in the coaching staff. Like, that alone to me puts them in that conversation to have a top 5 pick. And on top of that, I just don't think that the defense has really any notable players except for Max Crosby. Like, is that what we're really banking on, is for him to have a all-pro type season and do what? Like, what else is this defense really going to do? So
Right, yeah. My expectations for the Raiders are incredibly low. Josh McDaniels would not be coaching that team if Raiders ownership had the money to fire him. They financially can't do it. That's the only reason he's coaching their team this year. That's an experiment that failed maybe worse than the Nathaniel Hackett experiment in Denver, because Denver knew that they could just move on.
yeah,
Vegas had to get it right. Vegas has no money. Their ownership is not liquid at all. They cannot buy out his contract, so he has to coach the team. And he has not been doing a good job. I mean, every time Josh McDaniels leaves New England, every time Josh McDaniels leaves Tom Brady, it's a complete joke.
yeah. It's not good. It's not good at all. Josh McDaniels didn't make it as a head coach with Denver. He's probably not going to make it with the Raiders. I think that experiment should be put to rest.
Don't forget about the Colts. Don't forget about the Colts. He was the Colts head coach for 8 hours.
For 8 hours. Ooh. Yeah, there's just something off with that guy. I don't know what it is. Couldn't put my finger on it.
Couldn't agree more. My favorite Raiders storyline of the offseason is Jacoby Myers signing there. Because if you remember, the main Jacoby Myers storyline of last year was him throwing a game against the Raiders. He threw that ball from the sideline right into Chandler Jones' lap when he was on the Patriots. And then free agency opens, and oh no, Jacoby Myers runs on over to to the Las Vegas Raiders and signs a contract? I can't be the only one asking questions here.
So who are you picking? Raiders versus Broncos?
I'm going to take the Broncos.
Yeah, the last few games here we've been on the same wavelength. I think, like I said, the Raiders are just a mess right now. Let's move on to, let's do, let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 games left. Do we want to just do the Chargers versus the Dolphins, Cowboys versus Giants, Bills versus Jets, and then wrap it up?
Works for me.
All right, let's do that.
I'll just say something. I mean, this Eagles-Patriots game right now, we can do this in one sentence. It's the Eagles versus the Patriots. Casey, who are you picking? I'm picking the Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles. And I think...
yeah, I mean, this seems very easy to me.
Yeah.
4 points against Mac Jones and Juju Smith's explosive knee. I'm okay with the Eagles.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't know why the spread is so low. That is my one concern. Is it seems low, but it's this defensive line is just too good. Like it's really good. The offense is going to be better than they were last year. I'm sticking with the Eagles pick here. Let's move on to Chargers versus Dolphins. This is one of those games that I have starred. One that I really want to watch because it's Tua versus Justin Herbert. I think this is going to be explosive. This is the one that many of you should go watch. I believe it's a 4:30 game, if I'm not mistaken. It is. It's a 4:30 game on CBS. I hope this is the one that's nationally televised for most people. Otherwise, they're going to get stinkers like the Philadelphia Eagles at New England and Las Vegas versus Denver. But yeah, this is a fireworks game for me. I really like the matchup. I think the Chargers were going to finally see what that defense could have been, what it should have been from last year. Bosa was out all last year for the most part, and they're getting healthy. I think Quentin Johnson adds another dynamic presence to their receiving core that was already really good. I think Miami, even without Jalen Ramsey, their defense can get after you with Bradley Chubb. And I think that Tua, if he stays upright, he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And he got Tyreek Hill. I mean, this game has just got like shootout written across it, right? It is the true definition of a shootout. And it's over under is 51, which is the strange part. It's not even the highest one out of the all NFL.
The first note I have here under Dolphins Chargers is over, and I don't care what the number is. 41, 51, 61, it doesn't matter to me. These two teams are going to score almost at will, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, each team has a game breaker, and I think that Tua's injury concern and Tua's injuries last season, if he was healthy, I think you could have seen an MVP type season from him. He was on pace to have an MVP type season, and he's going to get a chance to do it this year. Starting off with the Chargers is probably the biggest test for him because that's going to be a really tough defensive line to throw against. Chargers -3. I would have felt better about picking the Chargers if it was 2.5, but -3, that push for the field goal at the end of the game when it's 30-33. I don't want to get like, I wish they would have just either picked 3.5 or 2.5 so I could go one way.
That's how they get you.
But
that's how they get you.
I don't know who I'm picking here, Jacob. Who are you picking?
I'm taking the Dolphins. The last image I have in my head are the Los Angeles Chargers going up 30 points on the Jaguars and the Jaguars storming back. If
Oh,
you think I'm going to turn around and bet on Justin Herbert and the Chargers this week, you could never be more wrong. You touched about it on the Dolphins here. If Tua stays healthy, what can this team be? They have the weapons. You hear every time you turn around, someone in Cincinnati is talking about is T. Higgins and Jamar Chase better than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and who knows? Those are four elite receivers. The Dolphins have an amazing setup down there. They brought in Braxton Berrios and Chosen Anderson to play the supplementary role to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which kudos to you getting names we recognize to be your wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4. I think that offense is going to be great. You have the same running back issue you had last year, though, in my eyes, where you don't really have one. You like having multiple running backs to keep legs fresh, but Jeff Wilson Jr., like what, Raheem Mostert, are these guys really moving the needle for you? No. But what did the Dolphins do this year? They went out and they drafted Devin Achane out of Texas A&M. And what did the Dolphins already do? They run circles around everyone on the field. Devin Achane ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. He's going to be the starting running back by the time we get into meaningful football in the NFL. I mean, every game's meaningful, but the time we get into really looking at the playoffs and really looking at what matters outside of what's going on in Cincinnati, Devin Achane's going to be the running back for the Miami Dolphins, and I think he's going to make that offense take another step up. The other thing that the Dolphins did that cannot be talked about enough is bringing in Vic Fangio to coach that defense. Vic Fangio is one of the most seasoned veteran defensive coordinators in the entire NFL. He has worked with stars every stop he's been at. Every player loves playing for Vic Fangio, and every defense Vic Fangio has is top 10. He's a walking top 10 defense as a coordinator. There's no reason that, I mean, at least in my eyes, that the Dolphins don't take a leap into the top 10, maybe even top 5 defenses once Jalen Ramsey can get healthy. People forget they have Bradley Chubb. They traded for Bradley Chubb last year from Denver, and he didn't really do a whole lot once he got to Miami. But if you can unleash that defense with the guys they have, the big names they have, get those guys to play up to their potential, the Dolphins really scare me, and they're my pick to win the AFC East.
yeah, I think that would fit with a lot of people's opinions, mainly because of how people are feeling about the Bills right now. But the Dolphins, if everything goes the way that, like, if everything works out for them, the way that they intend it to be, they're one of the scariest teams in the NFL. Yeah, you convinced me to pick the Dolphins here, honestly. I was on the fence for a while, and it's mainly because the Chargers, they have a lot of unknowns but knowns about their defense. Like, we know they have a really good roster, but they can't stay healthy, and it's a matter of when, right? And what good does it do to you to not be available? And I know they're going to have a fully healthy roster right away, but you can't get that image out of your head of them giving up a 30-point lead. And
No, that defense
Dolphins,
petrifies me. Yeah.
against the Dolphins, who have maybe the most explosive offense in the NFL last year. I mean, yeah, I feel comfortable taking the Dolphins here.
Yeah, Austin Eckler also can't keep scoring 20 touchdowns a year.
Yeah, the touchdown
He scores
regression
20
is coming.
touchdowns every year. You can't keep that up. The other thing, you said Quentin Johnson should be a massive boost to that offense, right? We saw him at TCU last year. He's one of the best receivers in all of college football. Where is he? The Chargers released their depth chart, and Quentin Johnson is wide receiver 4. Josh Palmer beat out Quentin Johnson in training camp. What is going on in Los Angeles? That's a storyline I haven't seen a whole lot of places that I think is pretty interesting. Why is Quentin Johnson below Josh Palmer on their depth chart?
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't know that. I thought he was a lock for the 3rd spot.
I assumed so too.
That is definitely strange. But we both feel comfortable with the Dolphins. Let's just go ahead and
I feel
move
very
on.
good with the Dolphins.
Let's move on to Rams versus Seahawks. We're going to be very brief on this one because
Your guy.
this is my guy, Geno Smith. I think that this is a sleeper team as well to win the AFC West. I won't go deep into it because this is just the Rams have 3 players on their team: Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford, and that's it.
And one of them isn't playing.
Right. So yeah, Seahawks pretty much all the way.
Would you be surprised if we don't see Cooper Kupp at all this year? I know Sean McVay alluded to him going to IR, missing 4 weeks now, but if you put Cooper Kupp on IR and you're the Rams and you're sitting there at 1-3, and you look around and the rest of the NFC is pulling away, and you're falling by the wayside, are you shutting down Cooper Kupp for the year? I don't know why you're itching to play him this year, especially if Stafford's on his way out. Your defense is absolutely garbage. I don't know. I would almost be shocked if we see Cooper Kupp this season at this point.
Yeah.
I'm almost leaning that way.
It's really tough to see that. You don't hope that. You don't ever hope
No,
for that
not
to
at all.
happen to him. The dude was the number one receiver not even 2 years ago. He just can't stay healthy right now, and that's concerning. I would be very shocked if he doesn't come back after week 4, just because there's literally 3 players, like I mentioned before. I think they're going to really try to push him to come back. But if he gets hurt again after coming back, yeah, you got to shut him down. Like
Just the way that whole injury unfolded. They announced that he's questionable, and then he flies out of LA to go visit a hamstring specialist in Minnesota. Everything about that, and then not taking a stance against him going on IR today, really makes me just think there's more going on there than we know, and we know that it's bad. So I don't know. I'm really, really worried about Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. I wonder if they have a draft choice, if they have a draft pick this season. Is this
They do. They own their first-round pick this year.
All right. Well,
the Rams have their own first-round pick.
It might be a tank job. I won't lie. I know they didn't really have any other choice, though. They didn't have the money to do it, but
no, there's no lottery in the NFL, so the league can't directly rig the picking of players like they can in the NBA, like we saw with Patrick Ewing and the frozen envelope and all that stuff. If there was ever a year for the NFL to find a way to rig the draft order, it's getting the Rams to 1-1. It's keeping Caleb Williams in LA. If Caleb Williams can go from USC to the Rams, and all this conversation about him contemplating going back to school if it's the Cardinals, I keep one eye peeled on the Rams this year and the NFL pulling some strings to get them Caleb Williams. I've been on that for about a year and a half now. I'm woke on the Rams this year trying to get Caleb Williams.
That is a funny take. I love that. I'm gonna use that on Off the Bench probably. It does make sense.
You're more than welcome.
If he wants to sit out because the Cardinals have the number 1 spot, be my guest. Do that. I'm never a fan of sitting longer in college because you're just not making your money, right? It's more of a money thing to me. Like, go get your bag, dude. Like.
Well, for 99% of the world, correct. For Caleb Williams, though, he's probably making $4 million this year, $5 million this year. Like, obviously, that's not NFL money, but that's not.
But he makes like 25 signing his first round.
No, I get that. I'm just saying it's not the way it used to be, where you were choosing zero.
That's
like
fair.
He'd be choosing maybe, and say, God forbid, he wins back-to-back Heisman trophies and then comes back next year, he's cracking into double digits of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. What teams does he say no to, I guess, is the real question. If we can just diverge just a little time.
Yeah. I think the Cardinals are a no.
Yeah, I think Cardinals. I think the Rams are a yes. I think
the Rams are a resounding yes.
I think the Raiders are a no.
I don't know. Vegas? Devontae Adams?
Dysfunctional organization, though.
Dysfunctional. This is true. This is true. Or does he not say no to anyone? I feel like since Eli Manning, we've had quarterback after quarterback, big name player after big name player, threaten to come back to school, and we've never seen it. No one's coming back to school. You have a chance. He's gonna go to class. You know what he's going to do? He's going to go to class this week. And then they're going to ask him on Saturday, hey, are you going to the NFL next year? He's going to be like, oh, yeah, I was wrong. I'm going to the NFL. There's no way he's going to turn around and go back to college. It's just not a feasible option.
Just because he doesn't
No
want
one's
to go
doing
back to
that.
class.
You're not going to class when you can go play professional football? Not that he goes to class now. I guess that's something I should consider.
Yeah, that's.
I'm taking the Seahawks -5.5. I think a touchdown. I was expecting at least a touchdown here. I think the Rams are a joke.
Yeah, I have to agree. The Rams are pretty light in terms of names, and I just think the Seahawks are a really good football team right now.
Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to play as well, which is huge news for that offense.
Huge news. I actually didn't know that yet, and that's perfect because I have a running gag that Geno Smith's a top 10 quarterback, and I need Jackson Smith to play.
You need JSN.
I need him to play if that's going to continue.
I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is by far my highest percentage of teams this year. Out of my 8 fantasy teams, I believe he is on 7 of them. I adore Jackson Smith and Jigba, especially in PPR settings. I think he's going to absolutely dominate in Seattle. On to the primetime games.
Yeah, we have Cowboys versus Giants. We'll try to be really quick about the last 2 so we can wrap up this show. I have no faith in the Giants. I know that they did a lot last year, but it feels a lot like the Vikings to me. They're just squeaking by, winning games by grinding them out. I just don't know if they can continue to do that. They didn't really get like big threats for Daniel Jones to throw to. They did get Jalen Hyatt, I believe.
Darren Waller.
Darren Waller hasn't been Darren Waller though in like 2 years though. I don't know.
Derek Carr. Is that Darren Waller or is that Derek Carr?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Love Darren Waller in New York.
I loved him for the one season he broke out, and I had him on my fantasy team.
That's fair.
And ever since then, I've picked him, and he's just maybe that's my problem is that I fell in love with him, and then he just continued to hurt me over and over again until now to this point. Is Darren Waller the number 1 in the Giants system? Probably.
I believe so.
Jalen Hyatt's probably number 2 in that system.
I think they're hoping that Jalen Hyatt and Wandale Moore can become the 1 and 2 in that system, and then Darren Waller can be a true tight end. Because to start this year, Darren Waller is going to be playing wide receiver. He's going to be catching almost every pass in a receiving core that Isaiah Hodgins, an undrafted rookie last year, was leading that team down a playoff stretch. I love Darren Waller. He's right behind Travis Kelce for me in every tight end ranking this year. I think he's just going to dominate the catch share in New York. The balls have to go somewhere, and I think they're just going to go to Darren Waller.
That's fair.
I like the Cowboys just because their offense early in the year. Dak early in the year rolls. He always does. Through the first 4 or 5 weeks, we get a graphic by some, talking head every year that he's on pace to break some record, or he's going to throw for X amount of yards, or so many touchdowns, or whatever it is. Then he's going to end the year with 4,400 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and 13 picks. And that's just what Dak is. But for the first 4 weeks, he looks like the MVP of the league. And I'm not going to be fooled again. I'm taking the Cowboys against the Giants. I'm not gonna bet against the star on primetime.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not either. I think like I said, I just don't have faith in the Giants. The Giants just, I feel like they're very fluky last year. So that might be wrong of me, and I hope I'm wrong. I hate having feelings like that where it's like I don't have a great explanation for it. I don't have any facts or stats to back it up. I just have a feeling. I hate having that feeling. I want them to prove me wrong. If they can cover this spread, then maybe it starts to change my feelings towards the Giants. But it's just hard to root for Daniel Jones, man, when he's not been and he hasn't really had anyone to throw to, so it's hard to even judge him on that either. So I'm just hoping that you're right. I hope Darren Waller is who you say he is and really just provides this team with something that they haven't had before.
The other thing about the Giants that scares me, looking beyond just this week, is what happened with the Ravens last year. When Lamar went down on the last year of his contract, I think everyone kind of collectively took a deep breath and said, I don't think we're going to see him again. Not with the way that contract looks. And then what happened? He shut it down for the rest of the year. Now, whether that was contract or injury, we don't know. If Saquon gets dinged up, he's shutting it down. 1 year deal, $11 million. There's no way as a running back you are putting everything on the line to power through injuries for a team that just sat all offseason and re-signed Daniel Jones, looked you in the eye and said, you're not worth it. You're not doing it. You're not powering through for the New York Giants. You don't love the New York Giants. You're just there to play football and move on next year. If Saquon gets dinged up, he's going to shut it down. And I think the Giants without Saquon Barkley are a real tough team to watch.
Yeah, a very, very tough team to watch. So we both got Dallas here. Last game, Bills versus Jets. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I liked the Jets before Hard Knocks, and then I watched Hard Knocks, and I like the Jets more, which I don't think is good. I shouldn't let Hard Knocks sway my opinions of teams, but it does every year. If you can watch Hard Knocks and not root for those guys and root for that team a little bit, then we're just different people. But, I mean, they talked me all the way into the Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson edge rush duo being like 2 Pro Bowlers, like 10 sacks apiece. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect out of the Jets. That defense is so young. I mean, everyone knows how amazing Sauce Gardner was last year, but it was only 1 year. He did play in Group of 5 football in college. He has not been playing this talent level for very long. Not saying I'm nervous. Sauce is a great corner, but there is a little bit of room, to expect somewhat of a sophomore slump. Guys like DJ Reed last year playing well above their ceiling anywhere else prior in their career. That defense last year played so far above its ceiling for the whole year. So maybe that is just what those guys can do now. But that defense scares me a little bit that they might regress. I love the offense in New York with the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to take Garrett Wilson to the moon. I think Garrett Wilson is a very special wide receiver 1, and the rest of those weapons, with Mecole Hardman, and then you move Allen Lazard down to a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3. I think that offense is very exciting with the backfield of Dalvin Cook now and Breece Hall getting healthy. You can ease Breece Hall in with a guy like Dalvin Cook. You have a 20-year-old in Israel Abanikanda, who I loved coming out of Pitt for the Bengals, but obviously he goes to the Jets, and I have to watch him on Hard Knocks. And I love the Jets this year. I think their O-line is obviously the glaring sirens are going off. There's a problem here, and we have everything else fixed, and the O-line is going to be the demise of this team, which does scare me. But Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton, Joe Tippmann, the rookie center of Wisconsin, those 3 guys I think are all 3 very, very solid players. And I think the 3 of them are key points to an offensive line, and you can find 2 other spots, especially with a guy like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and the weapons they have on offense. They can get by with that O-line if it's just average. It might struggle to be average, but it needs to be average.
Yeah, that's the key is can they be average on the offensive line? Now, you and I know I've done a lot of research into 2 things this offseason. Geno Smith and Aaron Rodgers and whether or not he can take this team to the promised land. And let me tell you, I'm nervous for Aaron. I really am. And Hard Knocks, at first it was doing a lot of good things for me, but there's one scene in episode 3, and I think it's the very start of episode 3. He is just cussing out the offense, saying we can't get a drive put together, and all those feelings of doubt just came flooding back. I'm like, oh, here we go. I can't believe they didn't choose to cut that out. Like, they left that in there intentionally to let the folks know that they're struggling a little bit in training camp. Now, ends up being that there's a montage of him throwing the football all over the field, but that's just Aaron Rodgers. He's going to eventually get into a groove at some point at training camp. Like, it's training camp. It's not live action. But like I said last year, or just this last time that you were in the office, I'm worried about this offensive line. I think Aaron Rodgers has had one of the best offensive lines in football for a lot of his career. And now he's going to an organization that he doesn't have the stability there. And there's no light at the end of this tunnel. It's not like they went out and improved at all. It's all guys coming back and coming off of injury, and that's really hard to gauge. And it's not like those guys that you mentioned before, like Becton, really were moving the needle in the first place. Like they were average at best. And so it's going to be a lot for Aaron Rodgers to help improve that. And a quarterback can. They can and they do help out the offensive line in many ways, like getting rid of the football early or getting into the right protections, things of that nature. Can Aaron Rodgers do it consistently this season? Probably. But against the Buffalo Bills, it's a tough one. Von Miller not playing in this game really helps push this to more even than what the spread is suggesting, in my opinion. I don't know. This is a game where I've gone back and forth a lot. I am leaning more towards the Jets currently, as it stands right now. And I see you.
We're gonna do all this whole show, and we're gonna get to the last game, and we're gonna agree. There's no fun in that.
I know we've been doing it all show.
We disagree the whole time. We get to the last game, and you're gonna take my Jets.
There's just so much. There's so much on the Bills that are going towards the down. Like they're downtrending. Like the relationship between Diggs, that worries me. There's a lot of there's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of smoke. I don't know if there's a fire, but there's a lot of smoke around the Bills. And I think Von Miller would have swayed my opinion to pick the Bills here, but he's not playing. So that just
The other thing about the Bills defense that people forget is Leslie Frazier's gone after that Bengals game. Leslie Frazier's gone, and Tremaine Edmonds is in Chicago. Like that's the captain of their defense, the guy that was calling their plays, and their defensive coordinator. That is an insane loss for one offseason, much less losing Von Miller, much less having more pressure than any other 31 team in the league to succeed this year. Like, I think the Bills have been pushed into a corner now where they either win a Super Bowl or blow up in flames this year. I think those are the only two options.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think it's either or, and it's now or never. And it doesn't help that they don't have Von Miller. I think if they had Von Miller, I'd probably pick Buffalo here. But until he comes back, I just don't feel comfortable with the Bills until I see something. I'm picking the Jets. You are picking the Jets, right?
I'm picking the Jets as well, but I want to qualify my Jets love with one more thing. I don't have them making the playoffs.
Right. I don't
Like,
know.
I love the Jets, and I love Aaron Rodgers, and I love what they can do on offense this year. I think their defense is going to be a top 10 unit in the league, and I think they're like 11-6 on the outside looking into the AFC playoffs. 10-7 on the outside looking into the AFC playoffs. Like, the margin for error in the AFC this year is razor thin. Razor thin. You're not going to be able to trip up and lose on a missed extra point to Pittsburgh and then throw 3 picks against Chicago and lose to Cooper Rush and expect to still, compete like we did last year. The Bengals need to come out and they need to win early. The Chiefs going out here week 1, talking about they don't have Travis Kelce, they might lose to the Lions. That's going to come back to bite them when it comes to seeding. I'm not saying a week 1 loss is going to keep the Kansas City Chiefs out of the playoffs. That's going to come back to bite them when we're talking about seeding in week 17, week 18. Like, the margin for error in the AFC is slim to none. You have to beat every team you're supposed to beat, and then you have to win the coin flips. And I just don't think the Jets are going to be able to win the coin flips.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a really good point. The margin for error is, like you said, very razor thin, very tight, And a lot of these AFC teams, if they start off 0-2, you just can't come back from it. And the Jets have one of the hardest schedule openers, like just the first 5, 6 games out of everyone in the NFL. And by the time they get through that gauntlet, let's just say they're below 500 at all, morale's low. I don't know. It's not a good look for them. Um,
If the Jets start to struggle at any point this season, I think it's over.
yeah,
I think if the Jets are going to actually compete this year, they need to be competitive wire to wire.
yeah, I
That
agree.
Aaron Rodgers and this band of taking guys from here and here and here and here to build this offense, that doesn't work when you start to struggle. That doesn't work when you have to look yourself in the mirror, start practicing a little harder, start paying attention to the playbook. That doesn't work as well. You need guys that are friends, guys that are gelling together. That's why we talk about camaraderie in the locker room being such a massive point. And people make fun of it. Oh, who cares about team chemistry and stuff like that? But it does matter. It does swing the needle. And I don't know what Aaron Rodgers does for team chemistry outside of his guys. I mean, you saw as soon as he said he's going to New York, he sends him a grocery list of players he needs him to bring in. I don't know. I have a fear of the Jets if they lose 1 or 2 games early. But if they can start hot, if that ball can get rolling down the hill, it might pick up too much steam.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I hate to do that at the very end of our show. We had been pretty much back and forth the entire time, but what worse way than to both agree on something at the very end here? Um, now that we've gone through the whole game, I just want to all the games this week. I want to just thank the chat for riding with us for this long. It was about two and
Absolutely.
2.5 hours worth of just grinding through all the games and kind of giving our brief thoughts on all the games. Next time, Jacob and I are gonna probably talk about this, but I don't know if we're gonna do every single game. That was a lot,
Yes.
and it felt
No.
like
We.
it felt very. Some of it was unprepared, and I want to be better prepared for it next time. I want to have a lot more graphics for you. I have a lot of different ideas for this show. We'll be a little bit better prepared next time for it. This was kind of just testing the waters. It is week one, preseason week one. So if you can just bear with us for the time being, we'll get a better structure going here. Um, but I hope you all enjoyed the show this time around. We been really looking forward to launching this. Um, Came down. It literally did come down right to the wire. I mean, you didn't get
I,
your equipment
I
until
got off
today.
of I got off of work at 7 o'clock Eastern, picked up my mic at 7:15 Eastern, and was live by 7:30. So this was thrown together pretty last minute in terms of setup and equipment, but the plan has been in the works for quite some time. Casey said it perfectly there, but I couldn't be more excited to do this, and this is exactly what I love to do. I love talking football. I was so happy to be with you all talking about baseball over the summer, but this is really where my heart lies, and I can't wait to keep seeing you guys on Wednesday nights here on Mac and JT.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Mac and JT in this future of this program. Um, I'm I'm just very happy that you got to experience Chatterbox Sports during the football season. That's what the
Yes.
whole conversation, how this whole thing started. If we're gonna just quickly jump into that, we probably should have done this at the beginning, but I'm gonna talk about it now since we're at the end of the show and anyone wants to stay, they can. If not, they can leave. But Jacob didn't get to stick around at the biggest part of our organization. I mean, the football time is our biggest time of the year. It's when we get the most takes out of people, the most fire, um, passion during the shows, and I didn't want Jacob to miss out on that. So I had to get him on this show. He's very knowledgeable about all the NFL. I'm very happy that he decided to do this with me. I'm very excited for the future of this program. Like I said, very happy that the turnout that we had for the very first time. Um, Everyone in the chat, Jordan Earhart, Mark Fetters, Chi-Town Real Estate, Jack Butler, Derby Stardom. Thank you all. Christopher Rees. You all have been sticking through with the entire show this up to this point. Evan Maurer. I saw Elliot joined in. Um, we're only going to get bigger and bigger. Let me just say that. We have lots of big plans for the future. And I'm excited to move forward with it.
I can't wait. I think for episode 1, I think we did a good job. There's definitely room for improvement, and we'll work on it the next week, and then we'll see you guys next Wednesday, bigger and better.
Yep. So until then, thank you all for watching. Next Wednesday we will be live at 7:30, and we'll have a good show for you.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.